I think so. Stuart, I think I knew you since I was in JC, right? That was like 97.
Yeah.
And before that, I had this huge love for like personal development and stuff, and went into self-help stuff. And went to those stores whereby they specialize in self-improvement things. And eventually, I mean, the motivation really was learning about how I could better myself, especially in relationship with other people. Like, how do I talk to other people? How do I manage other people better? And eventually, I learned that it's not so much of how well I can manage other people, but how well I can manage myself.
Mm.
Right. So I think along the way, I can't remember how we connected. We did, and I thought NLP was interesting, and I signed up for it. So this is kind of how I started and what drove me to even engage in NLP in the first place. So one of the things that actually drove me to NLP was learning how to relate to an elder brother, right? So our relationship was generally not very good. There was some bullying involved and things like that.
Mm.
So, he was bigger than me, couldn't do much. And, I then wanted to find something else that I can use to manage him, right? So I thought what was useful also is that in NLP, at least some of the presuppositions that we had helps us to frame our thoughts in how we relate to people.
Mhm.
So it did help me in the way that I spoke with my brother when, especially when we were younger and how do we talk about things. And it was quite effective in diffusing some of the high tension areas, especially when I started to like. I remember my one of the earlier days, right? When I think I was still going through the training with you. Learn to chunk up his intent, right, and then link back to his behavior, and then show him how his behavior actually doesn't, help him achieve his higher level intent, and then he kind of like walked off. I'm like, okay, that was cool. So I thought it's very useful in also, I guess, helping people to clarify where they're coming from and what they want.
Mm.
Because with NLP, it helps me to, has a framework by which I can identify how people think. Not so much just modalities, right? Even things like meta programs and things like that, and the way that people sort. So that helps me to clarify what other people think they are saying with what they mean. And at some levels, it also helps them to gain clarity because, I mean, after some time, we realize that people's thoughts are often muddled,
Mm.
and being able to help them clarify actually improves the communication outcomes, especially with work now, right? Helps me to work better with different types of bosses. I think I think it's about efficiency and not wasting time, right? So I find, I mean, especially when we've worked or we've dealt with people enough, and you realize that people are going down the wrong path or have misunderstanding, and then it might take months, or if you're doing a project and much later down the road, and then you have to scramble to try to fix it. So the cost, I guess, it's about efficiency,
Mm.
and at some level for me, right, I hate those inefficiencies, right? When I have to last minute scramble to do something, or you realize that you've done something and it was not what was expected. Uh, I I guess in some ways it affects the well-being as well, right? For me, it gets me very agitated. It gets me very irritated. So, nipping it in the bud upfront as much as I can, kinds of makes my life easier to deal with. I think it helps to build rapport faster. That's definitely one. But again, if we come back to clarity and setting norms, right? When bosses come and go, I learn to relate and I learn to set norms with them very quickly, right? Um, and that setting of norms could be things like even how do we communicate with one another, how do we relate to one another, what do you expect? Actually helps, with solidifying and in terms of like the group dynamics model, right? Form, storm, norm, perform, right? It helps us to get to the performing stage a lot faster. We pass the norm and storm stage. Of course, the storming is a lot. How do I say? We mitigate the storming stage a lot more because of the way that we clarify and align, and therefore there's less conflict, right? So there still will be conflict, and that's where we start to align. But it actually cushions and accelerates the process to get to understanding each other better. And then how do we come back and start to iteratively improve on how do we communicate, how do we work together. So I think professionally, NLP becomes very useful for that. I guess I secretly coach my boss sometimes. I don't know whether he realizes it. Hope this video doesn't get to him. But I think it's very useful because then we also help them to clarify their thoughts. I'm tempted to say everyone.
Thank you.
But I mean, logically, if you think about it, it is useful for almost everyone, right? I mean, almost so that I can qualify it a little bit. But yeah, probably be difficult to train a baby. But so for most people who come, I think it's useful because it's about understanding how you think and how you process information, and also about managing yourself. So I mean, if you're a parent, you learn to become a better parent and how to relate with a kid, or you could learn how to teach. Right? There's this entire book by Richard Bandler on teaching excellence. So if you were a co-worker, then you wanted to work better with someone else, then the way that you communicate with someone or the way that you pay someone becomes useful. So I suppose if I flip the question to more of, well, who are the people I think should not use NLP? I think the people, okay, so this is a personal thing, right? I think there are some people who are very manipulative in nature, right? So I believe that people who are, overly self-centered, or do not have other people's interests, I think they should keep away from NLP because they can do a lot of damage with it. I think a lot of it is quite subconscious. So when I relate to someone, the pacing, the wordings that we use, the ability to see where someone is coming from, right? So that part of NLP comes quite naturally, right? After training and practicing it for years. And I find that to be useful. The other thing about NLP is some of the models, again, are very useful to use, like Newton model and meta model, again, very useful, right? In how do we clarify and do transderivational search to help people understand where they're coming from, what do they mean, things like that. So I guess even in practitioner, that's basic, right? Newton and then meta model. The other thing that's very useful I found is how do we effectively use presuppositions, right, to help people to move along. And I think the more effective we are able to plant certain thoughts or presuppose certain things, it helps people to move along faster or more easily. The other thing that I really love about NLP is the score model, right? So if you integrate score with logical levels, and then you have this whole series of questions and things that you can deal with when you coach with someone. So it's kind of almost impossible to run out of questions, right? With a model like that. So if I talk about it, I can talk about first position, second position, third position, perceptual positions, right? If we add all these together, it really helps to explore the mental model of a person, right? And I think it's very powerful because, I mean, even when I see some other coaches, they don't do things like that.